Sarah Mitchell pulled her old pickup truck into the parking lot of Murphy's Diner, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. She had just moved to Millbrook, a quiet town in rural Virginia, looking for peace after 15 years of service she couldn't talk about. At 38, with shoulder-length brown hair and an average build, she looked like she could be anyone's sister, neighbor, or friend. That was exactly what she wanted. Inside the diner, the lunch crowd hummed with conversation. Sarah took a seat at the counter and ordered coffee. She noticed the stares but ignored them. New faces always drew attention in small towns. "You're the one who bought the old Henderson place," said the waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes. "I'm Diane. Welcome to Millbrook." "Thank you," Sarah replied with a small smile. Sarah Mitchell, just looking for somewhere quiet. "Well, you found it." Diane poured her coffee. "What brings you to our little corner of the world?" Sarah had prepared for this question. Just needed a change. Worked in San Diego for years. Wanted something different. At a table near the window, three men in their 30s watched her with interest. The loudest one, Derek Hammond, owned a construction company and thought his high school football glory days made him important. His friends, Mike and Tony, laughed at everything he said. "Hey, new girl," Derek called out. "You lost. Nearest yoga studio is about 40 miles that way." His friends snickered. Sarah kept her eyes on her coffee. "I'm talking to you, sweetheart," Derek said, louder now. Several other customers glanced over, but no one said anything. Derek's father owned half the buildings in town. Sarah turned slowly, her face calm. "I'm not lost, just having coffee." "Ooh, she talks," Mike said, grinning. Derek stood up and walked over, his friends following. He leaned against the counter, invading her space. "See, we don't get many new people here, and we definitely don't get many women who think they can just ignore people. It's rude." "I wasn't trying to be rude," Sarah said evenly. "I just wanted a quiet cup of coffee." "Well, maybe you should go back to California or wherever you came from," Derek said. "We do things different here. Women have manners." Sarah felt the old fire rising in her chest, the one she had learned to control through countless hours of training. She had faced terrorists, survived Hell Week, completed missions that would never be declassified. But here, in a small-town diner, she was being mocked by a man who had probably never faced real danger in his life. She took a slow breath. "I'll keep that in mind." Derek laughed. "Yeah, you do that, sweetheart. Come on, boys. This place is getting boring anyway." They left money on their table and walked out, their laughter echoing through the diner. Sarah noticed several people looking at her with sympathy, but no one had spoken up. She understood. In small towns, you didn't cross the powerful families. Diane refilled her coffee. "Don't mind Derek. He thinks he runs this town." "His family does run it, from what I hear," Sarah said quietly. "That they do." Diane lowered her voice. "His daddy's the mayor. They own the construction company, the hardware store, and half the land around here. Nobody wants trouble with them." Sarah nodded. She had moved here to escape her past, not to start new fights. But something about the way Derek had spoken to her, the way he assumed she was weak because she was a woman, stirred something deep inside. She had spent 15 years proving men like him wrong. Over the next few weeks, Sarah kept to herself. She worked on fixing up her property, a small house on 5 acres with a barn that needed repairs. She ran every morning before dawn, the way she always had. She did her shopping at the grocery store on the edge of town, trying to avoid the diner and the people who gathered there. But Millbrook was small, and running into Derek Hammond was inevitable. It happened at the hardware store. Sarah was buying supplies for her fence repairs when she heard his voice behind her. "Well, well, look who decided to stick around. Thought for sure you'd have run back to the city by now." Sarah turned. Derek stood there with Mike, both wearing their company shirts. "Just buying some supplies," she said. "Fixing up that old place yourself?" Derek asked, looking at her purchases. "That's cute. You know, my company could do that work for you. Wouldn't want you to hurt yourself." "I can manage," Sarah said. "I'm sure you think you can," Derek replied with a smirk. "But some jobs need a man's touch. You know, actual strength." Sarah picked up her supplies. "I'll be fine." As she walked past them, Derek called out loud enough for the whole store to hear. "Hey, when you realize you can't handle it, give me a call. I'll send some real workers over to help the little lady out." His laughter followed her out the door. That night Sarah sat on her porch, watching the sun set over the fields. She had faced down armed insurgents without flinching. She had completed missions that broke other soldiers. But here, in this peaceful town, she was being treated like she was helpless. 3 weeks after the hardware store encounter, Sarah had settled into a quiet routine. She worked on her property during the day and read on her porch at night. The townspeople had started to accept her presence, even if Derek Hammond and his friends still made comments whenever they saw her. Then came the morning that changed everything. Sarah was finishing her 5-mile run when she heard shouting from the neighboring property. Old Henry Miller, an 82-year-old farmer who lived alone, was yelling for help. Sarah immediately changed direction and sprinted toward his farm. She found Henry in his barn, pinned under a fallen tractor jack. His leg was caught, and his face was pale with pain. The jack had slipped while he was working underneath his tractor, and the machine's weight was crushing him. "Hold on, Henry," Sarah said, quickly assessing the situation. The tractor was old and heavy, at least 3,000 pounds. Henry couldn't have much time before serious damage was done to his leg. Without hesitation, Sarah positioned herself under the tractor's frame. She had lifted heavy equipment before, knew exactly how to use her legs and core strength. With a controlled breath, she lifted with everything she had. The tractor rose. Not much, just a few inches, but it was enough. "Pull yourself out," she commanded. "Now, Henry." The old man, despite his pain, understood the urgency. He dragged himself backward, his injured leg scraping against the dirt floor. The moment he was clear, Sarah carefully lowered the tractor back down. She knelt beside him, checking his leg. It was badly bruised but not broken. "We need to get you to the hospital." "My phone's in the house," Henry gasped. "Can't walk on this leg." "I'll get you there." Sarah helped him up, supporting his weight. She was smaller than him, but she carried him to her truck without obvious strain, her years of training making the task manageable. At the hospital, the staff rushed Henry inside. A nurse asked Sarah what happened, and she explained briefly. Soon, word spread through the small town. The new woman had saved Henry Miller's life. By that afternoon, Sarah's phone started ringing. People she had never met called to thank her. Diane from the diner stopped by her house with a homemade pie. "You're a hero," Diane said, tears in her eyes. "Henry's like family to all of us." "I just did what anyone would do," Sarah replied. "No," Diane said firmly. "Most people couldn't have lifted that tractor. You saved his life." The next day, Sarah went into town for supplies. The reception was different. People waved, smiled, called her by name. She stopped at Murphy's Diner for lunch, and several people came over to shake her hand. Then Derek Hammond walked in. He heard the story like everyone else, but he had a different take on it. "So you lifted a tractor," he said loudly, standing by her table. "Big deal. Henry's tractor is ancient, probably doesn't weigh much. Plus adrenaline. Anyone could have done it." The diner went quiet. Sarah looked up at him. "If you say so." "I do say so," Derek continued. "Everyone's acting like you're some kind of superhero. You just got lucky. Happened to be in the right place at the right time." "Derek, leave her alone," Diane said from behind the counter. "She saved a man's life." "I'm not bothering her, just stating facts." Derek leaned against Sarah's table. "See, I think you're trying to be something you're not, trying to impress people, make them think you're tough, but I know better." Sarah carefully set down her fork. "And what do you know?" "I know women," Derek said with a grin. They talk big, but when it comes down to it, they need men to protect them, to do the real work. You might have lifted a tractor once, but that doesn't change what you are. And what's that? Sarah asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Weak, Derek said. That's just nature. Men are stronger, it's biology. You can pretend all you want, but you'll never be as strong as a real man. Something flickered in Sarah's eyes, something cold and hard that made Derek take an involuntary step back. But then she blinked, and it was gone. Okay, she said simply, turning back to her food. Derek, feeling like he had won, laughed. Yeah, that's what I thought. Come on, boys, let's get some real food somewhere else. After they left, an older man at the counter spoke up. Why do you let him talk to you like that? Sarah looked at him. Because fighting isn't always the answer. But you could, the man started. Could what? Sarah interrupted gently. Beat him up, and then what? His family owns this town. I'd end up with legal problems and nothing would change. Men like Derek don't learn from violence. They learn from being wrong. She finished her lunch and left. That evening, Sarah received a visit from Henry Miller. He arrived on crutches, his daughter driving him. I wanted to thank you properly, he said from her porch. The doctor said without you I could have lost that leg, maybe worse. I'm glad I was there, Sarah said. Henry studied her carefully. I was in Korea, fought in the war, and I've seen plenty of strong people in my life. What you did yesterday, that wasn't normal strength, that was training. Sarah met his eyes but said nothing. I won't pry, Henry continued. But I know military training when I see it. Whatever you did before you came here, you did it well, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you, Henry. After he left, Sarah sat alone on her porch. She had come to Millbrook to leave her past behind, to be just another civilian. But the past had a way of catching up, even when you didn't want it to. Word of Sarah saving Henry Miller spread beyond Millbrook. A local newspaper ran a story. Mystery woman saves local farmer. The reporter had interviewed several witnesses who claimed Sarah had lifted a 3,000-pound tractor. The story painted her as a local hero. Derek Hammond hated it. For weeks, he stewed over the attention Sarah was getting. People who used to respect him were now talking about her. His ego couldn't handle being overshadowed by a woman he considered weak. One Friday night, Derek and his friends were at Murphy's Diner, drinking coffee and getting louder with each story. Sarah was there too, sitting alone at the counter, reading a book and eating dinner. I'm telling you, it's all exaggerated, Derek said loudly. That tractor probably weighs 1,000 pounds, not 3,000. The newspaper got it wrong. Derek, let it go, Mike said quietly. Who cares? I care, Derek snapped. Everyone's treating her like she's special when she's not. It's annoying. Tony, the quietest of the three, glanced at Sarah. Maybe she is stronger than she looks. No woman is stronger than me, Derek declared. He stood up suddenly, decision made. You know what? I'm going to prove it right now. He walked over to Sarah's seat. Hey, Superwoman. Sarah looked up from her book. Yes. I'm tired of everyone acting like you're so strong, so let's settle this right now. You and me arm wrestling, right here. The diner went silent. Everyone turned to watch. Sarah closed her book. I don't think that's necessary. Of course you don't, Derek said with a smirk. Because you know you'll lose. All that hero talk and you won't even back it up. Derek, come on, Diane said. Leave her alone. No, Derek said. She's got everyone convinced she's tough. Let's see it, unless she's scared. Sarah sighed. This was exactly what she had wanted to avoid, but Derek wasn't going to stop. She could see it in his eyes, the desperate need to prove his dominance. Fine, she said quietly. One match, then you leave me alone. Derek grinned widely. Deal. They sat across from each other at a table. Someone cleared the plates. Derek rolled up his sleeve, flexing his arm. He was a big man, worked construction, had real muscle. Sarah simply placed her elbow on the table. Ready to lose, sweetheart? Derek asked. Just go, Sarah replied. Tony counted down. 3, 2, 1, go. Derek pushed with all his strength immediately. His face turned red with effort. Sarah's arm didn't move at all, not even a tremor. Derek pushed harder, veins standing out on his forehead. Still, Sarah's arm stayed perfectly vertical, unmoved. The crowd began to murmur. Then Sarah spoke, her voice calm. Are you done? She barely seemed to be trying. No strain on her face, no tension in her shoulders. She looked like she was holding a cup of coffee, not arm wrestling a 200-pound man. Derek's confidence cracked. He pushed with everything he had, his whole body shaking with effort. Sarah's expression didn't change. Then slowly, deliberately, she began to push his arm down. It wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic. It was controlled, steady, and absolutely unstoppable. Derek's arm hit the table with a loud thump. The diner erupted in whispers. Derek sat there, stunned, staring at his hand like it had betrayed him. That was a fluke, he said quickly. I wasn't ready again. Derek, Sarah started. Again, he shouted. Best 2 out of 3. Sarah looked at him with something like pity. Okay. They reset. This time, Derek was ready. He had his weight positioned, his muscles tensed. When Tony counted down, Derek exploded with force. Sarah's arm still didn't move. He pushed until his arm shook, until sweat dripped down his face. Nothing worked. After 30 seconds, Sarah ended it even faster than before. Derek's arm hit the table. The sound echoed in the silent diner. One more, Derek said desperately. Come on, one more. No, Sarah said gently. It's over, Derek, you lost, it's okay. It's not okay, Derek shouted, standing up so fast his chair fell backward. You're cheating somehow, there's no way. Derek, Sarah interrupted, her voice still calm. I'm stronger than you, that's all. It doesn't make you less of a man, it's just a fact. You're not stronger than me, Derek's voice cracked. You can't be. Sarah stood up and faced him. The whole diner watched, tension thick in the air. Why not? Sarah asked. Why is it so hard to believe that I might be stronger? Because you're a woman, Derek said, his voice breaking. Women aren't, you're not supposed to. Supposed to what? Sarah's voice was soft but firm. Supposed to be weak, supposed to need your protection, supposed to make you feel strong. Derek had no answer. He looked around the diner at the faces staring at him, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly small. I need air, he muttered and pushed his way outside. Mike and Tony followed him. In the parking lot, Derek paced back and forth, his hands shaking. This doesn't make sense, he kept saying. It doesn't make sense. Derek, maybe we should just drop this, Mike said. She's clearly stronger, so what? So what? Derek spun on him. So everyone's going to think I'm weak, that I got beaten by a woman, my reputation is destroyed. Or, Tony said quietly, you could just let it go. Who cares what people think? But Derek did care. His whole identity was built on being the strong one, the dominant one. Without that, who was he? I'm going to find out who she really is, Derek said suddenly. People don't just have strength like that. She's hiding something, and I'm going to figure out what. Inside the diner, Sarah paid her bill and gathered her things. Diane stopped her at the door. You didn't have to do that, Diane said. You could have just walked away. I tried to, Sarah replied. But some people won't stop until you show them the truth. What is the truth? Diane asked quietly. Who are you really? Sarah looked at her for a long moment. Someone who's trying to leave the past behind. She walked out into the night, knowing that her peaceful life in Millbrook was about to get much more complicated. Derek Hammond spent the next week obsessed. He couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on work. The image of Sarah's arm not moving, the ease with which she had beaten him, played over and over in his mind. He had to know who she really was. He started digging. He found out she had paid cash for her property. No mortgage, no paper trail. Her truck was registered in Virginia, but only recently. Before that, nothing. He searched social media and found no profiles. It was like she hadn't existed before moving to Millbrook. She's definitely hiding something, Derek told Mike and Tony at his office. Normal people don't have zero online presence. Maybe she just values her privacy, Mike suggested. Or maybe she's running from something, Derek countered. Criminal record, witness protection, something. He hired a private investigator. The man was expensive, but Derek didn't care. 2 days later, the investigator called him. "You're not going to believe this," the investigator said. "Your mystery woman is Sarah Mitchell, former Navy SEAL, served 15 years, multiple combat deployments, honorable discharge 6 months ago." Derek felt like he had been punched. Navy SEAL, women can't be Navy SEALs. "They can now," the investigator said. "She was one of the first, and from what I found, she was one of the best. Her record is mostly classified, but the parts that aren't, let's just say she's the real deal. Special operations, counterterrorism. This woman is a legitimate warrior." After hanging up, Derek sat in stunned silence. Everything made sense now. The strength, the calmness under pressure, the way she moved. Sarah wasn't just strong for a woman. She was legitimately one of the most dangerous people he had ever met. His first instinct was fear. Then came anger, the kind born from humiliation. She had known the whole time that she could destroy him, but had let him keep talking, keep challenging her. She had made him look like a fool. But then another thought occurred to him. He could use this information. That Friday, Derek made his move. He arrived at Murphy's Diner when he knew it would be crowded. Sarah was there, as usual, sitting at the counter. Derek walked in with a folder under his arm and a smile on his face. "Sarah Mitchell," he announced loudly. "Or should I say Petty Officer Mitchell?" The diner went quiet. Sarah slowly turned to look at him. "That's right, everyone," Derek continued, walking to the center of the diner. "Our mysterious new resident isn't who she says she is. She's military, Navy SEAL to be specific." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People looked at Sarah with new eyes, some with awe, some with suspicion. "Is that true?" Diane asked quietly. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Yes." "See," Derek said triumphantly. "She's been lying to all of you, pretending to be just a normal person, but she's a trained killer." "I never lied," Sarah said, her voice controlled. "I just didn't advertise my past." "You let us all think you were nobody," Derek pressed on. "But you're not. You're what? Special forces. How many people have you killed?" The question hung in the air like poison. Sarah stood up slowly, and despite his bravado, Derek took a step back. "That's classified," Sarah said quietly, "and none of your business." "It is our business," Derek insisted, though his voice shook slightly. "We have a right to know who's living in our town, what you're capable of." "What I'm capable of." Sarah's voice was soft but carried through the silent diner. "I'm capable of protecting people, of doing what's necessary to keep others safe. That's what I did for 15 years. "You're a weapon," Derek said. "The government's weapon, and now you're here hiding in our little town. Why? What are you running from?" Sarah's control finally cracked. "I'm not running from anything. I gave 15 years of my life to this country. 15 years of missions I can't talk about, friends I watched die, and sacrifices you couldn't even imagine. I came here for peace, for quiet, for a chance to be normal." Her voice grew stronger. "But I didn't lie to anyone. I bought my property legally. I've been a good neighbor. I saved Henry Miller's life. The only thing I'm guilty of is wanting to be left alone." "But you're not normal," Derek said desperately. "You're not like us." "No," Sarah agreed. "I'm not. I spent 15 years training to do things most people can't do. I learned to push my body beyond normal limits. I learned to stay calm when people were shooting at me. I learned to complete missions that others couldn't." She looked around the diner at the faces watching her. "And yes," That makes me different. But it doesn't make me a threat. It doesn't make me your enemy. It just makes me someone who served her country and now wants to come home." An old man in the corner stood up. He wore a worn Marine Corps cap. "Young lady, I served in Vietnam, and I can tell you that people like Derek here don't understand what service means. Thank you for what you did. You've earned your peace." Several other veterans in the diner nodded or murmured agreement. But Derek wasn't done. She arm wrestled me knowing full well that she had military training. She set me up to look like a fool. "No," Sarah said firmly. "You challenged me, multiple times. You insisted. I tried to walk away, but you wouldn't let me. And then when I won, you couldn't accept it. So you went digging into my past because your ego couldn't handle losing to a woman." The truth of her words settled over the diner. People began to look at Derek differently. "This isn't fair," Derek said weakly. "Fair?" Sarah's voice sharpened. "You want to talk about fair? I've been nothing but respectful to you. I've ignored your insults, your mockery, your constant need to prove you're better than me. I've tried to be a good neighbor to this town, but you couldn't let it go. You had to keep pushing until you found something you could use against me." She picked up her jacket. "Well, congratulations, Derek. Now everyone knows I'm a Navy SEAL. I'm trained in combat, weapons, tactics, and 100 other things. I've served in places you've never heard of and done things I'll never be able to talk about. And yes, that makes me different." She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "But here's what you don't understand," she said. "All that training, all those skills, they were never about proving I'm better than anyone. They were about serving something bigger than myself, about protecting people who needed protection, about being strong enough to carry burdens others couldn't." She looked directly at Derek. "You've spent weeks trying to prove you're stronger than me, but strength isn't about muscle, it's about character, and by that measure, you're the weakest person in this room." The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of vehicles pulling into her driveway. She looked out her window and saw a line of trucks, maybe a dozen. People were getting out, carrying tools and lumber. She walked outside, confused. Henry Miller was there on his crutches, directing people. Diane from the diner was unpacking sandwiches. The old Marine from the diner was measuring her fence line. Even people she had never spoken to were there, ready to work. "What's going on?" Sarah asked. Henry smiled. "We're here to help with your property. Heard you've been doing all the work yourself. Figured it was time we acted like neighbors." "I don't understand," Sarah said. Diane walked over and handed her a cup of coffee. "After you left last night, we all had a long talk. About you, about Derek, about what it means to serve. And we realized we've been letting you stand alone when we should have been standing with you." Throughout the day, the people of Millbrook worked on Sarah's property. They fixed her fence, repaired her barn roof, and even built a new workshop. Sarah tried to help, but they insisted she supervise instead. "You've done enough carrying heavy things," the old Marine said with a wink. "Let us do the work for once." By evening, Sarah's property looked transformed. As the sun set, people began to pack up. But before they left, Henry called everyone together. "I want to say something," he announced. "Sarah, you saved my life. But more than that, you've shown us what real strength looks like. Not the kind that comes from muscles or ego, but the kind that comes from service and sacrifice." People nodded in agreement. "We're sorry it took us so long to see it," Henry continued. "We're sorry we let Derek make you feel unwelcome, but we see you now, and we're proud to have you as our neighbor." One by one, people came up to shake her hand or hug her. Veterans thanked her for her service. Parents told their children to remember her example. By the time everyone left, Sarah had tears in her eyes. But one person was noticeably absent, Derek Hammond. He had spent the day alone in his office, replaying the scene from the diner. Sarah's words had cut deep because they were true. He hadn't been strong. He had been weak, insecure, and cruel. That evening, he drove to Sarah's house. He sat in his truck for 10 minutes, building courage, before finally walking to her door. Sarah answered, surprised to see him. "Can I talk to you?" Derek asked quietly. Sarah studied him, then stepped aside. "Come in." They sat on her porch. For a long moment, Derek didn't speak. "I was wrong," he finally said. "About everything. I was threatened by you from the moment you arrived because you didn't fit into my idea of how things should be. And instead of dealing with my own insecurity, I took it out on you." Sarah listened without interrupting. "I've spent my whole life thinking that being strong meant being tough, being dominant, being the biggest guy in the room," Derek continued. "But you showed me that real strength is quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just is." He looked at her with genuine remorse. "I'm sorry, for the insults, for the challenges, for invading your privacy. You came here for peace and I made your life harder. That was wrong." "Thank you for saying that," Sarah said softly. "Can I ask you something?" Derek said. "Why didn't you ever fight back? You could have. You could have put me in my place 100 times." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Because violence isn't strength, Derek. Anyone can hurt someone. It takes real strength to show restraint. And because I've seen what happens when strong people abuse their power, I never want to be that person." "What was it like?" Derek asked, "being a SEAL?" Sarah looked out at the fields. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Hell Week alone almost broke me. There were times I wanted to quit every single day, but I didn't because I believed in something bigger than myself." "Did you ever doubt you could do it?" "Every single day," Sarah admitted. "But doubt is just fear, and fear is something you learn to work through, not run from." Derek nodded slowly. "I've been running from fear my whole life. Fear of not being good enough, fear of being weak. That's why I had to keep proving myself." "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," Sarah said. "You just have to be decent. That's all people really want." They talked for another hour, Derek asking questions about service and sacrifice, Sarah sharing what she could. When he finally left, he felt different somehow. Lighter. The next week, Derek did something unexpected. He stood up at a town council meeting and publicly apologized to Sarah. He also announced that his construction company would be offering free home repairs to elderly residents and veterans. "Someone recently taught me what service really means," he said, looking at Sarah in the audience. "It's time I started giving back to this community instead of just taking from it." The town changed after that. Sarah became more than just a neighbor. She became a friend, a mentor, and a quiet guardian. When teenagers got into trouble, parents sent them to talk to Sarah. When veterans struggled with their own service, they found someone who understood in Sarah. 3 months later, Derek approached Sarah with an idea. "What if we started a program, teaching self-defense and confidence to women in the community? You could lead it." Sarah smiled. "Why would I do that?" "Because you have skills that could help people," Derek said. "And because I think you're tired of hiding who you are. You're a Navy SEAL, Sarah. That's not something to hide. It's something to be proud of." Sarah considered it. "Okay, but on one condition." "What's that?" "You help me run it, and you have to take the classes too." Derek laughed. "Deal." The program started that summer. Every Saturday morning, Sarah taught self-defense, confidence, and discipline to anyone who wanted to learn. Women, men, teenagers, even some children attended. Derek was her assistant, and to his surprise, he loved it. One morning after class, a teenage girl approached Sarah nervously. "Miss Mitchell, I just wanted to say thank you. My mom's boyfriend used to push her around, but after she took your class, she stood up to him. She told him to leave. We're safe now because of you." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Your mom did that. I just showed her that she already had the strength." As the girl walked away, Derek stood beside Sarah. "You know, I used to think being strong meant making other people feel small, but you've shown me it means making them feel strong too." Sarah smiled. "You're learning." That night, Sarah sat on her porch, watching the stars. She thought about her 15 years of service, the missions and the sacrifices. She thought about the fear she had felt when moving to Millbrook, wondering if she could ever really fit in. But now, sitting in this small town surrounded by friends, teaching others to be strong, helping her community, Sarah realized something important. She had spent 15 years serving her country. Now she was serving her community. The work was different, but the purpose was the same, using her strength to help others, to protect those who needed protection, to make the world a little bit better. And for the first time since leaving the Navy, Sarah felt like she was exactly where she belonged. She had come to Millbrook looking for peace. Instead, she had found purpose. And she had learned that the strongest thing you can do isn't proving your strength.